A BMW pulled up, and there was 4 guys jumped out of AKs and shotguns. I started hanging around in the marinas until the point where I actually got involved and started speaking to the mafia. There's no way out of this house whatsoever. If they come through the door, that's it. We're fucked.
Is this your life? Are you reading a film script right now? Because I'm a little bit.
We didn't invite you on here. We didn't invite you on here to pitch a new Bourne Identity film, mate. Hello, and welcome back to the Lock-In podcast. For those that haven't been on before, the Lock-In is me and Baz in our virtual pub called the Brace of Readlings, and we are just chatting to ordinary people with extraordinary stories to tell, and we've definitely got one of those today. So, without further ado, we'll introduce Mr. Jay Jordan. Jay, how are you?
Yeah, I'm living the dream, mate. How are you?
I never know if living the dream means the opposite of living the dream, or whether it is.
100%, yeah, without a doubt. It's the dream of stress.
I'm not going to introduce you. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, okay? Because you, surprisingly enough, you know you better than I know you. So, just kind of walk me through who you are, what your background is, and how you came to set it up, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. This is like one hell of a long story.
That's fine. We've got ages, mate. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Jay Jordan, come from UK. I joined the military when I was 16 years old. When I was in the military, I served in Northern Ireland, Kosovo, Sierra Leone, and Iraq, and then non-operational tours in Cyprus, Gibraltar, and Jordan, and the Falklands. My time in the military was only 6 years, but after I left the military, I ended up living on the streets for a bit, which kind of opened my eyes to what was actually going on around me, and to a certain extent what was happening when it comes to veterans actually leaving the army. But luckily for me, I ended up contracting. I got a contract out for Iraq, and then I basically contracted out in the Middle East and out in Afghanistan, out in West Africa, pretty much for the last 17 years. Primarily in close protection jobs, NGOs, providing security, project management, risk management, things like this. So I got to see quite a bit around those regions for quite a while. But more importantly, I got a lot of experience from there, because we was working in small teams. Sometimes we was out in the middle of nowhere working alone. You got to start to learn how to think on your toes for when things happening, and especially to look after the clients, because obviously the primary role is to keep those clients safe. What I didn't know at the time was that the next step, and everything pretty much I fell into in life, I've never planned anything, it was to fall into the child recovery industry. Now, the child recovery industry was something I'd never heard about before or anything like this. But there was a guy that I met, and I still don't remember how I met him, but I do remember I used to speak to him quite a lot on, do you remember the old MSN Messenger?
Yeah.
That's like how long ago this was. And he used to ask me for points of contact, because I had quite a big network around the world anyway. It's a lot bigger than what it was now. But he'd always get in touch with me for a country that he was operating in, see if I knew somebody that could help him out and things like this. And I never really thought much of it. I was content in what I was doing. I was living a good life from being private security and private military. So I'll give him a point of contact, never hear anything until I needed another one. Well, at the end of 2012... he gets in touch with me and asks me personally to come out to Lebanon to help him out on a case. He was basically working on a case. A mother and a child were being held against their will by the father, the Lebanese father, who had kidnapped the children from Australia, and he was connected to Hezbollah. So I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I thought, all right. Just so happened that at the time I got injured in Afghanistan, so they sent me home on medical leave to heal. So I thought, I've got nothing else to do with my time, I may as well. So I went over there, I gave him fresh eyes on. Within that fresh eyes on period, which was about a week period, a lot of stuff happened. One of the prime things that did happen was that we went into a town. I wanted to go set up an OP and check out this house and see what we could do with this house, and where there was actually being held against their will. And he took the wrong turn in. So we ended up down this dead end. He does a 10-point turn to try to get out of here. By the time he finished his 10-point turn, a BMW pulled up, and there was 4 guys jumped out of AKs and shotguns. So that was like my first introduction into the child recovery industry. And I was thinking, what am I doing here? I couldn't believe it. Considering I've gone from an industry where I'm carrying weapons, I've got body armor, and I've got teams, and I've got backup systems, and we've got operations rooms and support all over the place. It was literally me and him alone in that country.
Yeah.
No one knew where we were. So we ended up getting out of that situation, and basically we got chased out of town at gunpoint. But that was my first introduction. I gave him my opinion on what he needs to do to actually make it work. Not long after that, I left country, and I didn't think anything else of it. I thought that was it. I was going to wait to go back to Afghan. About 2 weeks later, the owner of his company gets in touch with me, and the owner of his company in itself, I'd met him prior to going out on that initial, like recce, let's call it. And I didn't like him at all, and he clearly didn't like me. He was one of these blokes who thought he was like a big bad mercenary. He's never been in the military, never done anything like that, and he used to walk around giving it the big licks all the time. So I didn't think much of him, but he comes up to me and asked me to take on a case, and then me and the missus, we sat down about it, and the constant question that kept coming up was, who else is going to do it if I don't do it? And one thing that I did realise is that the standards in the industry in that period of time that I was there was terrible. Clearly, the ownership of these companies is terrible, and my prime focus was to get that kid out of there. So I went over there and I took over that case. Now, this is a long story short because I have a book about it. Okay. And I want everyone to buy my book, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I went over there. I mean, there was so many trials and tribulations. It was unbelievable. There's elements where I got strip searched by the mafia whilst I'm standing in front of them in my underwear, and I'm telling them that I need them to do something for me and asking them how much it would cost. There were times where I was being followed. I got chased a few times. There was a time where I ended up ramming a car off the road just to make sure that I could escape from a situation that I was about to fall into. A lot of surveillance went on.
Sorry, can I just just 1 second. Is this your life? Are you reading a film script right now? Because I'm a little bit.
We didn't invite you on here. We didn't invite you on here to pitch a new Bourne Identity film, mate.
Sorry, carry on. I'm literally like, oh my god. Sorry, carry on.
That's just the thing, though, right? People do think it sounds like a movie, but this is genuine stuff that happened.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
So I ended up getting out of that situation. I realised very quickly that I couldn't organise this operation on the Lebanese side. It was way too difficult. People were not working with me. There was all about money. There was a lot of mistrust, primarily because of the religious divides in the areas that we were working in, and obviously the different factions that I was trying to talk to and try to actually get involved in it. So I decided that I lived in Cyprus. I knew Cyprus very well. I knew about all of the organizations that were in Cyprus, especially criminal organizations that had powers to do things that normal people didn't have to do. On the military side of it, I had the military plan. I knew exactly what I needed to do on that side. So I went over to Cyprus, and then I started hanging around in the marinas until the point where I actually got involved and started speaking to the mafia. And that's where the game changed massively. I met one guy. He played me around for about a week. And he ended up passing me on to another guy. And it's probably all about gauging trust. And when he passed me to this other guy, they helped me buy a boat, which was a 6.2 meter rib. Now I don't know nothing about boats. And when I looked at a 6.2 meter rib, I'm thinking, what? I got to go 120 miles across that water on that boat. And it's like, literally, you just look at it and it's an inflatable boat.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at. And I'm like, nah, this can't be good in any way whatsoever. That was my biggest fear at the whole thing. But they helped me rig it up. We put radar on it. We put fish finder on it for our cover story, because the cover story was weak. I got an old bootneck who, I mean, the only way to describe this guy is a real life Mad Murdoch from the A-Team. Do you remember Mad Murdoch?
Yeah.
And like this bloke was like pucker gen nuts, but yet solid all the way through it all. So yeah, he's the one who was jumping on this boat and going across that water. So he would operate on the land side. But the cover story was so weak, it was unbelievable. His cover story was that he was on the piss in Cyprus, which doesn't surprise me for him because of the person that he is, and that his mates bet him that he couldn't make it across the water in this boat and actually get over to Lebanon and go fishing in Lebanon. That's literally it. That was his cover story. Wow. It was so weak. So the whole plan for him was to actually get over there and basically fuck around in the water, break all of the rules as much as possible, to the point where we can get the radar operator looking at his screen and then just go, oh, fuck's sake, it's him again. And then they'd start to ignore him when he's breaking the rules, because it's becoming a pattern that he breaks the rules every single day. It went in our favor massively. And it also went against us because they ended up putting him under a curfew after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we had a limited time period to actually do our operation in. But at the same time, he was able to see if there's any Coast Guard vessels, any military vessels or anything like that, because all over Lebanon coast, there's so many different people that are out there. So he was running all that. I ran the land, the operation on the land. We set up an operation in a hotel. And basically from there, we extracted the mother and child once they actually get into that hotel. Get him to the boat. The plan was to get him to the boat and then get out and then go meet the mafia from Cyprus in the middle of the Mediterranean. They take us into Cyprus. The plan was solid, apart from the fact timing slipped. And then that day, when it happened, because we had that curfew, originally it was supposed to happen at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it ended up happening at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we'd lost the boat, and now we had to. It was a fuck it moment. It was literally one of those moments where you're like, fuck it, we got to go do this now. The opportunity was there. The hesitation was almost there until I thought, now we've got to do this no matter what. But we didn't have a safe house. So I ended up taking the mother and child to my fixer's house, kicked his family out of his house, locked his entire house down, sat there on the longest night of my life because there were people peering. This is where everyone is looking for us now. People peering through this like frosted glass and stuff like that. And I'm standing there. There's no way out of this house whatsoever. If they come through the door, that's it. We're fucked. But the night went on, and then obviously all the thoughts that were in my head, will my fixer make it back? Has my fixer been caught? Will my fixer shop me out? All of this stuff was going through my head constantly. And then when it came to 1 minute past 7 in the morning, he was late as far as I was concerned. And then I'm thinking to myself, he ain't coming back. What are we going to do now? Luckily, he did come back. It was only about 4 minutes past 7, but those 4 minutes were very, very long. And then we managed to get down to the boat and then get out of them. So that was my first introduction. We get back to Cyprus. We get into the marina down in Larnaca. We waited about 5 minutes, and then from there, we literally just walked to my car, drove down to a hotel, dropped them off, and then watched that family reunite. And it was like so surreal going from all of that to that point in time. And I was exhausted anyway, like because I don't know if you've ever been on a 6.2 meter rib going across 100 miles of ocean.
Every other day,
realised.
I just got back from Tenerife. That was most days.
yeah. I never realised in any way whatsoever how many muscles you have in your body until that point because it hits every single one of them. It literally destroys it. But yeah, I watched that happen, and then and that was it. So I started working for this company.
Sorry, Jay. Was that was your first? That was your first job.
First job.
Okay,
Never ever knew anything about the industry. The only thing that got me through it was all my experience going up to that point.
Yeah.
So,
and I was quite shocked.
I turned up at my first job, if I turned up at my first job and people started using the words Hezbollah and mafia, I'm pretty sure I'd have fucking run away. So it's a testament to your morals and that you wanted to do this, and that was, but also your minerals, to use a Cockney phrase. It's
yeah.
It's that's some balls of steel. That.
Well, I should say
I've heard about them on the news. That's bad news. I'm going home.
So my observation is like so whilst telling that story, it's like all I can think is that you're sort of staying calm really during that situation, even though it's a really tense situation. That can only just be, like you just said, from all the experience and all your training that you've done previous to that, and sort of knowing the situation that you're in. I mean, that's got to be primarily how you're able to do that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because at the end of the day, it's like, this is why when I talk about the company and everything like that, having a military mind, the mentality of the military in itself, and it's not just military, it's the contracting side, because we've got the corporate side and the professional side, the client side as well. Having that in you, you have to stay calm in front of your clients if you're in Afghanistan and the shit's going down. You have to do everything else, and it doesn't matter what's going on inside your body. It doesn't matter what's going on inside your head. You have to speak to the clients as if it's a normal situation, and everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Just sit down there. We'll handle this sort of thing. And that's what's constantly going through. But everything else is just like, what? But when it comes out, it's calm.
So I'm guessing in that situation, you're able to, from experience, know pretty much what's going on in the world around you. So knowing that how you've got to react to that. So you were saying, you knew that people were searching for you. So, having to stay calm and not make a move until the right time. It's just the way you're talking about it. I'm literally thinking, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd probably just, there's panic would probably be the worst thing you could do, right?
Yeah, 100% panicking. That's it. It's like when you see it in the movies and stuff like that. Somebody goes in a rob a bank or something like that. They get away and they're driving like 100 miles an hour, drive through every traffic light, everything like this. Yeah, you're gonna get caught. If you was to go into a situation like that, which is a dangerous situation, and come out and you're very, very calm and you just drive like a normal citizen, the chances of you getting caught, and if you've got that plan in place, the chance of you going to get caught is a lot less due to the fact you're not committing a scene. You're not bringing the attention towards yourself. Everything that we do,
How to rob a
um,
bank.
like,
Number one, drive normally. Got it.
I'm gonna take notes of that myself. We had plans for that sort of stuff, but that's a way different story. For
Yeah.
Way different story. Somebody else ended up beating us to it anyway. But everything, it has to be planned to the finest detail. At that time, with being my first job, I was continuously trying to work things out as I was going along. What would I do if this happened? What would I do if that happened? And the problem solving skills that you get from being in the military and contracting in itself, they become like right to the front. What I found and what I've developed over the years of doing this is the fact that when we're actually trying to figure out how to do something, we have to make multiple plans. Doesn't matter what it is. I have to learn a city so quickly as if it's my own city. And there's cities out there that I know better than my own city. I don't even know how to get to the other side of the city where I'm living at the moment. But if you go take me to Lebanon or you take me to Baghdad, I know those streets like anything. But if you come to a junction, you turn left and right. I need to know exactly what happens when you turn left or right. And I need to know what could go wrong. And what I do, I create a plan to the extent of every single turning that I have to take, every single prominent point in that operation. I have to try to destroy the operation. And that's how I work inside my head. I do everything I can to make it fail. Because then I make multiple plans to how to do the same thing, and then do everything I can to make every single plan fail. And I do it all very quickly. To the point where you can actually analyze what is likely to succeed in comparison to what's not. And that comes down to risk management and stuff like that as well. So when you get to that point where you've got a 97, 98, 99% probability that it's going to work, that part of the plan, this is what we're going to do. That part of the plan, figure out that one, and then so on and so forth. So it's as much as there's a lot to do, it's not very time consuming because we continuously work on it all the way through and as quick as possible with every single detail.
It's a bit like that adage, isn't it? Which is plan for the worst, hope for the best kind of deal.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
plan for every eventuality. Yeah.
Yeah, but also remember that no plan's going to go to plan.
Yeah.
I like the idea that I'm going to ask you what so clearly, obviously, in your line of work, everything has to be planned to the minutest detail, and everything has to go to plan. You're very organised, very calm, and all that kind of. I like to think like that away from work, like when you go on holiday and stuff, you just say, "Fuck it, I'm going to wing it," and you start losing your shit when things go wrong, and there's this release of just like I'm not doing all the organising stuff. I'm not even printing out my boarding card. Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly what I do. Seriously, outside of work, in work, I'm so organised, it's unbelievable. Outside, I mean, you should see my computer right now. It's a right mess. And I stress about it every single day. And I just go, no, I'm not dealing with it. Anything that I do, I'd literally do wing it in real life. I just can't be asked to organise anything in my own life.
As we're sitting here amazed by your story, I've got like my other thoughts are like there's a normal guy there as well. I like to think of you sitting down like watching TV or a movie and going, bollocks that.
Yeah,
I do that. Don't ever watch a movie with me, especially when it's a war movie or something like that, because I'll be sitting there going, "Nah, they wouldn't be able to do that. The police don't have those sort of assets. The police definitely wouldn't respond like that. The military wouldn't be able to fire that many rounds." There was a movie I was watching the other day, and I'm sitting there with a boy, and it was one of the Hollywood magazines, and he's just coming out with two weapons and just shooting. In fact, it was for Ragnarok when he comes out with the two weapons and starts shooting everything. And I was like, "No, that wouldn't happen. He's out of ammunition before he even jumps off that fucking spaceship."
You taking notes about what he's done wrong. It's like, well, you have to debrief him at the end of the film.
So, Joe, I'm a massive film buff, so let me know a film that is fairly accurate because I want to go and watch it again now. So, you must see
13 hours.
Oh, okay, yes, I've seen it. Yeah.
13 hours of Benghazi. I'm telling you now, that is like, to me, that's got a lot of like meaning towards me. I think it's the most accurate depiction of private contractors working in that sort of environment. It gives the relationship between the clients, because you get clients that are complete twats, like and they do treat us as if we're just nobodies. But then when it comes to the fact of doing the job, then they start changing their mind. They remember that for about a week, and then they just go back to being twats again. But in general, for the way that situation was, for the frustration that was involved in them not being able to get out and go into that firefight and actually help, and then for them just to make that command decision themselves, like, fuck it, we're going. And that is that fuck it moment that you always get on operations. That is definitely one of the most accurate movies I could ever think of.
I have the same moment in Aldi. Do you know what I mean? When I can't decide whether to buy pork or beef. Fuck it, I'm going with beef. That's it. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what the worst thing is, though, right?
Life, same thing.
The worst thing about my entire life is that I can go and make command decisions on anything when it comes to operations and everything like that. Do you know I can't go shopping? I cannot physically go into a supermarket with a shopping list and say, right, this is going to be easy. Put that in the trolley. Because I go there and there's so much choice, and I'm sitting there going, and I'm trying to analyze what is the best type of toilet paper to buy. So I'm sitting there in front of it, and I'm just standing there, and there's like fucking 200 fucking different types of toilet paper. And I'm like, I can't fucking do this. And then I'll just walk out, I'll leave. That's it. Can't do it.
I love that because it sort of exemplifies what you do in your operations. The fact that you'll see everything that's the operation going shopping, and then look at the end of it and go, actually, like the end result isn't worth all this analysation, is it? So,
exactly.
There's also the problem that you're banned from every local supermarket near you from abseiling down the outside and throwing a smoke bomb in before you enter.
Yeah, but I mean, I only did it twice. I don't see what the big deal is.
Same supermarket. That was your problem.
I feel like with your story, Jay, we're going to be sort of like shooting backwards and forwards in your history. Do you mind taking us back to when you first joined the military at 16? Because obviously that's not a decision at 16 you probably made was going to bring you where you were now. So what was that like?
I think primarily I didn't know what I was doing. Well, again, that's probably been a pattern throughout my entire life. 9 years old, I knew I wanted to join the movie, and that's primarily because I grew up on war movies, and I was like, yeah, I'll have a bit of that.
Yeah.
15 years old, I skipped school and tried to join the military. I went down to the career centre, and I ended up in front of one of the Marines. I don't know if it's commando or what, but it was in the Marine section. They told me to do pull-ups, and I couldn't do a single pull-up. And they was like, because then they knew I was skiving school to do this. And he was like, yeah, go back to school, do a bit of training, and then come back. So 16, I'd left school. I'd already started working in factories. I jumped down a career centre because that was the only thing that I wanted to do. And that was what I was dedicated for. Careers officers in school and that sort of stuff, there was always like, well, what would you do if you didn't make it into the military? I will. I'm not going to fail. I'm going into the military. That's it. So I was dedicated towards it. I went down there and obviously signed up when I was 16. Passed my selection to get in, started training. And then, to be fair, with the way that I grew up, going into the military, it wasn't that difficult. I got someone shouting. I've had that all my life. I got someone telling me to run. That was probably the hardest part, is going and getting beasted. In fact, even that, getting beasted for somebody else's mistakes, that wasn't anything unusual to me either. The discipline in itself and everything, that was fantastic for me because it's gave me structure within my life, and it took me from being the kid that was against the world to the point where there are people around me that actually help me, because that's where the teamwork comes into it, and the discipline actually teaches you to become such a better person in itself. Without that structure, I dread to think where I would have ended up like. But it was good for me. I loved it. I loved Depot.
That's amazing. And then the next
I had a
thing
bed.
The next thing you said as well, you were that you were on the streets for a bit. And I think this is quite an important thing to say, because without getting too heavy and political about it, a lot of people struggle. I know people who've left the military and they struggle to fit in because they don't have somebody to tell them what to do, to tell them where to be, to do what they lack life skills, but also it's a massive culture shock going from that kind of environment into real life. So can you just talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, when you leave the military, they don't teach you how to live. When you're in the military, you've got everything done for you. Your food's cooked for you. Your bills are paid for you. Everything is done for you. So leaving the military, it's literally hand your card in, bang, cheers, easy. There's a plane ticket if you want it. I didn't take my plane ticket initially, and then crack on. That's it. You're done. So I didn't have any family or anything like that because I was always away from home, never went home, didn't have any family, had no interest in connecting with them or anything like that. So I get back and I started off stayed in Cyprus. I then went from Cyprus. I spent my savings to go to Italy.
Sorry, Jay. What age are you at this point in your life?
This is 22.
Yeah. So when you left, yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up going to Italy. I spent all my savings in Italy and ended up back in the UK. And I was thinking, what do I do now? My entire goal of going back to the UK was to find a job in a factory or something like that because I knew how to do the factory walk-in and try to get a job in the factories. That wasn't happening. And then it was just a case of, where's all that support gone? Where were all of those people that were around me for the last fucking 6 years? And that was it. So I just sat down on the bench one day and I thought, I'll just stay here and start writing a book. I started writing a book, never finished that one. I had great ideas and great ambition for it, but never finished it. And basically, where I was parked myself up on this bench, it was right next to a war memorial. It was in the centre of this little tiny village where it's got access to the public library. So I'm going to the library, check my emails and stuff like this. And basically, I was begging for enough money so I can go to a pub which was right across the road. And then I'd go in that pub, and then all the old war veterans would talk to me about their stories. I'd talk to them about their stories. They'd buy me beers, and then I'd go back to the bench at night time. And then go to the library the next day and do the same fucking routine over and then just sit there writing. And I did that for probably a good 6 months until I got an email. And it was my old colour boy from when I was in the army. He gets in touch with me, asked me what I was up to. So I told him. And he sent me a link to a list of companies. And at the time, there was only about 13 companies on this list. Now, that went from 13 to hundreds of companies for Iraq. And he said, mate, email those companies. He said, within a week, you'll be in work and you'll be back over in Iraq. I never wanted to go to Iraq again because when I was in Iraq, it was shit the first time. But I thought, all right, yeah. And then I went from 0 to 6 figures of fucking a year. I was earning 5 figures a month. And I didn't know what the job was. I knew that they'd sent me a plane ticket. I got on the plane and went over to Iraq. Didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't got a clue. I thought, all right, yeah, I'm going to Iraq. I know how to shoot. I should be good. And that was it. And then the first journey from the airport down to the military base, which was called the Green Zone, that's where I realised and I questioned myself, what the fuck am I doing here? Because I was watching cars get rammed off the road and all sorts everywhere. It was unbelievable. And I was just there going, But it gets to that process where you're like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. We'll just go with the punches, roll with the flow, And it was mad.
So the private security that you mentioned as well. So the kind of roles that you were doing there. What would it's not like what would a typical day be like?
Yeah, so there's no typical day. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I rocked up to my desk about 9, then I had a coffee. Not that sort of thing. But
pulled out the AK.
What were the sort of jobs that you did? What was the kind of typical jobs that were there?
Yeah, primarily it's close protection. So it's armed close protection, where we was working for the Corps of Engineers at the time. So they were our clients, and we would take the Corps of Engineers. This is all military and civilian personnel. And we would take them from A to B and then B to C and then back to A and make sure that they stay alive, basically. But it sounds simple, as if you're just jumping in the car and then going from A to B like a taxi driver and stuff like that. Nah, it was never simple, I tell you. There was so much planning that went into it.
It didn't sound simple to me just then.
I didn't know. That's my mind. But I mean, in those days, this was like 2004 now, so it was quite rough, especially in Baghdad. As quick as we would adapt our tactics to Al Qaeda would adapt their tactics to us. So we would set certain ways of doing things to stop being attacked by an IED or losing too many people during an IED. And it got to the point where their IEDs weren't even affecting us apart from destroying our vehicles. So they adapted and started moving to EFPs, which is basically an anti-tank, a handmade, homemade anti-tank device, which could go through our armor like a hot knife through butter. So then we had to readapt to that, and then they started using PIRs, which is the lasers that go across the road and stuff like that. So they'd activate and then deactivate and stuff like that. So it was like it was a constant thing. And I mean, I got there's a few of the stories that are in the book about it, things that we did over there, which again sound like movies, but actually really happened. But at the time, I didn't know how to drive, so I learned how to drive over there. There was an ex-copper. Worked for BMW driving school who used to teach all the cops how to drive on like high speeds, J-turns and stuff like this. Now I'm driving a 7.5, never driven before in my life, ever. Driving a 7.5 ton armoured vehicle, right? And I'm smashing it to the point it's almost on two wheels as I'm fucking turning and shit like this, because that's how they teach me. They're teaching me how to drive by ramming cars off the road, and we're traveling over 100 miles an hour whilst we're doing this shit. And I'm there going, 22 years old, I'm living the fucking dream here. This is the best thing I could ever fucking do in my entire life. It was fantastic. And it wasn't, so that was in 2004. I didn't get my driving license until 2008. So I've been driving for 4 years in Iraq, constantly smashing cars off the road. And then I had to sit down with an instructor who was already nervous as fuck. And I'm smashing it around roundabouts and fucking all sorts. He kept putting I was so frustrated because his civvy's just banging his brakes on and turning the wheel. Or I was just like, no, leave me to drive.
Usually when we have these conversations with three of us on here, that we're usually able to sort of chip in with our experiences as a comparison. But like literally me and him just sat here going, well, I can't wedge any of the things I've done into here.
About that. I had a mission the other day where there was only one trolley left at Aldi, and there was me and this old woman. So I just thought, I had to go 100 miles an hour and barge her out of the way. Do you know what I mean? Similar sort of thing. You mentioned your book. I wanted to let you talk a little bit about that. For anyone listening on audio platforms or watching on the video platforms, I'll put an Amazon link to the book underneath wherever you are, wherever you're watching or listening to us. But yeah, talk us through the book.
Yeah, so the book itself, it's basically the first time that I've ever got the story of what actually happened in Lebanon on paper.
Yeah.
We did it before. We wrote scripts. Americans have like bastardized the script and Americanized it, and now it resembles some sort of like 1980s Die Hard movie and stuff like that. So it was getting to the point where I was just like, we're losing this. Completely losing it now. I need to get this all down on paper because it was going on for so long, and obviously memory starts to take over and you start losing it. So I was like, right, no, I need that story down on paper. So we did that, and then obviously at the same time as that, we got all the backstory in it. So I went into the nitty gritty details. Everything that I had, I put into that book of everything that happened all the way through that entire operation, how I went about it, to the extent of how we ended up developing into Pegasus afterwards, and obviously getting out of that job in the first place.
What's the title of the book? Just so
it's called Angel in the Shadows.
Angel in the Shadows.
Yeah, because at the time, everything that I did was working in the shadows. When I started in child recovery, obviously I was working in Afghanistan. One thing that I couldn't do is and especially considering I was doing an operation going back to Cyprus, I couldn't let anybody know anything real about me at that time. So when I was speaking to the clients, they only ever knew me as Jay. They didn't know anything about my family. They didn't know how many kids I had. They didn't know where I'd been working, what my history was, or anything like that.
Yeah.
Every detail, so I could just disappear after the case, and that's literally what I did. And I only got in communications with the mother of the child. I think it was like last year, just before I left Afghanistan, because I left Afghanistan end of July last year, and that was the first time that I'd spoken to her, and I actually spoke to the kid. Because she's all grown up now, like as a young teenager, like or mid-teens.
Yeah.
So it was impressive to see that, and that was the first time that she had actually handed the kid to me to speak to me. Then she said thank you. That in itself, oh man, that destroyed me. That did. I didn't know how to deal with that sort of emotion.
So I need to ask you how old you are, because obviously this was, I'm trying to get some context about you squeezing all of this into first the 6 years and then everything you've done since then. So how old are you?
I'm 40 now.
Yeah, right, okay. So I just thought you must be 60 with all the stuff that goes on. It's that kind of weird thing, you know.
I bounced around a lot though, and like I've done maritime. I worked on the Prince of Abu Dhabi's yacht and things like this. So I bounced around, and I was always quite lucky because I get into what was happening very early. I was in the coup d'etat. Got into Mali when there was a coup d'etat out in Mali. I got in there just after it happened. So I was always getting into things first. And that's where I was able to get my experience. I was able to get to see what it was like if I wanted to stick around, and then I'd move on to something else. And that was what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be stuck in the same job continuously. When I got bored, I just moved. That was it. I wasn't interested in sticking around when I wasn't interested anymore. So I was quite lucky on that side of things. And those days you could do it. You can't do it so much these days.
So now you've got, you mentioned Pegasus Ops, which is the company that you've got. Talk us through what sort of, what services do the business offer, and what could people do?
So the whole idea and the concept of what we're trying to create is a free service for the actual family who's had a child abducted or taken away or kidnapped or gone missing, whether that be run away or what. The only way that we can turn it into a free service is by raising funds from the general public. The concept of what we're trying to create is the fact that no one has any financial pressure in doing this. So if the donators donate £2, I mean, I spend £4.50 on a coffee majority of mornings going into Starbucks. So if majority of people can donate £2, that £2 then combines together to be able to complete an operation. The family has no financial pressure. Then no one's going to these companies that are actually ripping people off and lining their pockets. And then obviously we've got the funds to be able to operate in every manner that we need to be able to operate. And we're able to complete the job how we're supposed to complete the job without having to cut corners or take risks that we don't need to do. So the concept being is that for an international case, the average cost will be anywhere between around £30,000. And the time frame would then be anywhere between 14 to 30 days. On average, that time frame will change the more cases we take on. But if 15,000 people donated £2 or 7,500 people donated £4, that's an international case.
Yeah.
For a local case, the concept is that obviously we still raise the funds, but with the local cases, it's best to have a pot there where we can actually utilize that pot to go straight on a case as and when it happens. And the reason I say that is because we had a case back in April this year where a girl was groomed online to run away from home to be with her groomer. Within a 2-hour period, as soon as we had the phone call, within a 2-hour period, less than 2-hour period, we had a full profile of the groomer. We had all of his social media accounts. We had the pattern of how he was doing it, who he was targeting, where he was targeting it. We had his entire criminal record history. We had his address. And we had guys at the door ready to go through the door before the police had even started asking questions to the mother. And the only reason that we was able to do that is because I was able to make the calls, was because we had that pot. Right, I need this guy, and I need you to move into this location now. Start setting up. And then I was able to get the guys. I had guys down in London, I had guys in Germany that were analysing the internet and pulling everything from the internet so we could build up this profile. I did all of that from Iraq, and we was able to do it. That's how we can operate. It doesn't have to be me on the ground, you see. That's why we need that pot built, because we will act and we will chase leads and we will get to the bottom of everything a lot quicker. So that's the entire concept. So taking that into concept, imagine the fact that right now I've got 10 cases, 300 grand. If I got 150,000 people to donate £2, that's all of those cases that we can complete. You get to the point where you get 1 million people to donate £2, and then we could literally put permanent units out in South Africa, America, Australia, Canada, mainland Europe, and obviously the UK, and we can just push out operations continuously. The whole goal of what I'm trying to do is to get to the point where I can get 4 to 6 cases at least every single month, because on the first year of just getting 4 cases, then we will change numbers and people will start to pay attention to us. And when I say people, I mean governments or authorities. They have to start recognizing what we're doing. They have to start doing something about it. They have to change the way that they act when it comes to this. And they have to start working alongside us so we can actually do it. And technically what we do is create the people's army. This is the people taking control of our own children, because nobody else is looking for our children. And I'm not kidding when I say nobody else is looking. The police are waiting for phone calls continuously. That's all they're doing. That's why they put it out to the public. If you've seen this, give us a call. Let us know. There might be a reward in it, and that's about it.
So, if people want to donate, what we'll do is we'll leave links to all your social media and your where you're raising funds. We'll leave a link below into the book and everything. So, if people want to help, they can do. Thank you so much, Jay, for coming on. Thanks for telling your story. Hopefully, we can get this message out there and we can get more people
honestly,
to support the campaign. The Lock-In podcast is me and Baz in our virtual pub, just talking to whoever's turned up at our table. Now, this is definitely one of those situations where if we went home from the pub, we'd either think we were pissed and this didn't happen, or that the person who sat down was just taking the piss out of 2 bearded guys in the pub. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on. Really, really enjoyed your company. Really enjoyed your story. Let's see what we could do for you. So it just leaves me to say, if you've enjoyed it, subscribe wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening. Thanks, Jay. Good luck with things for the future. And if you're watching on YouTube, stay tuned. We'll have a little Q&A after this. So
perfect.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks very much. See you later. Ta-da.